What's up, everybody? It's Jay Wynn, your favorite host on Undisrupted, the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Here we have dope conversations. That's destiny over people's expectations. I'm so excited about today's episode. We are talking with Aliya Hall, who is a singer, a songwriter, a musician, and overall dope individual. We are dealing with a hot topic I feel you need to listen to. What is that? In this situation, if you're watching this, you're toxic. Look, don't turn this off. Stay tuned, okay? We have some dope conversations that we are dealing with, and it's not meant to throw you under the bus. It's meant to help you, so stick around. Today, I have a guest who I am so excited to talk to right now, and her name is Miss Aliya Hall.
Hello.
Let me tell you, okay, so for those of you listening right now, this is like just to repeat something I said in episode 1 about how I was supposed to start a podcast last year and it didn't work. I interviewed her last year. We had a great conversation, but she was one of the ones the Zoom call thing didn't work. Like, ask Aliya, it was difficult, wasn't it? Like,
It was so difficult, but it was okay.
it was supposed to be like hey, let's just have this quick 30-minute conversation, and it became like an hour and a half because of technical difficulties, and it didn't mount. But me and Aliya talked the other day, and we both experienced so much growth this past year. It was now that this discussion needed to happen, right? So
Yeah.
I'm excited. Today's topic, if you think this, you're toxic, okay? If you have this stuff that we discussed today cross your mind, you're a toxic individual. And it's time, okay, but own up to it, but don't brag about it. Like, okay, I used to be somebody who, I used to protest against TikTok, okay? I used to say, this is stupid. Who needs TikTok? Bring Vine back, right? Like, I was preaching against it so heavily. Now I'm always on TikTok because that's where I find my news and information, I feel like. But on TikTok, I realized, and you can tell me, like, where you've seen it, but almost everybody brags about being toxic. There's songs now where people just, I'm toxic, you're toxic, and like, you're happy about that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, right?
It's
like-
super crazy. Honestly, like, it's funny because songs that are on TikTok, I'll listen to them or hear them on the radio. I'm like, dang, this is a real song. But then you start to listen about the dynamic of the relationship or the whatever. I'm like, what in the world? Toxicity is almost glorified. Like, I think
Wow, yep.
there is obviously like power in like, okay, being accountable and saying this trait of mine or this part of me is toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is like to process through that, not necessarily to be like, I'm toxic and this is just the way it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because then you can never reach the healthiest version of yourself, but you're also hurting people around you as well. And this becomes our normal. Dysfunction becomes our normal, you know? So
Right.
it's pretty crazy. We gotta fix it.
Look, I'll never
Okay.
forget. Okay, years ago. It was years ago. I want to say 2011, maybe. I was talking to this girl, right? At first, we were just friends. I was talking to this girl, and then we started getting to the point where, let's see what's happening. But look, she decided that she didn't want to be with me, and that, like, I think this actually damaged our friendship, really, because we were friends first. But she decided she didn't want to be with me, and I'm like, why? Like, what did I do? Not the like, what did I do? Crying thing. No, it was like, why? What happened? What was the switch? She's like, you don't really like me. I'm like, what makes you say that? She said, I kid you not, I'm not making this up. She said, you don't like me because you don't hit me, you don't grab my hair, you don't call me B word. I'm like, yo, this is wild. Like, I'm like, you're crazy. She was like, no, you're crazy because you don't know what real love is. I'm like, yo, you're crazy. I have to choke you out in order for you to feel love. She goes, at least I'll feel something. I'm like, yo, I gotta go. But what's crazy is she was so used to it, and she grew up with it, where she felt like, if you're not damaging me physically, that means I can't feel anything emotionally. You know what I mean? There's so many people who grew up in so many different toxic type of relationships that they feel like physical pain is love. Physical pain is a confirmation that you're really there and you're down for the person. And it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, that's very unhealthy. And we're going to get into the healing part, guys. We're not just going to be messy and just talk about the toxic stuff. We are going to expose you about how you're toxic. But we're going to get into the healing part of it because Miss Aliya does have a song called Healed. We're going to get into that. But first, let me ask. So, have you been in a toxic relationship?
Have I? You know what? It's so funny because, in all honesty, so my relationships were more so like situationships were toxic in itself. Okay? But there has been several back to back, if I could be honest, that were just like, this is it. And I got to a point where like, this is for the streets. I'm not meant for the streets. I got to get out of here. I can't do it. But yes, I have, and they were horrible. They were not.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Before we go into like what made it really, really not good, were you equally toxic back to them? Let me tell you why I say that before you answer. I found out in many times where we have like the worst relationships or situationships, as you said, in our life, we definitely like played one of the biggest parts of it, but sometimes we don't want to acknowledge it. So were you toxic?
I will say this, okay? So I have always been a person that like, this is not good, but likes to play with fire. My mom told me like, when I would reach for the burner, she'd like, stop it. She would hit my hand. I would cry for a minute and go back. And so it's toxic. So I will say when I first started out, I wasn't a player in the game necessarily, but the game was kind of intriguing, right? And I knew God was like, back out, you don't do this, right?
You weren't a player, like, but the game was playing you.
Yes! And he was like, all right. So to be honest, if I could be honest, first situationship, it didn't start off like that for me, but I kind of learned it. And I kind of was like, okay, this is like, whatever. By the third time, I was playing. I was playing the game.
By the third time.
I knew I was playing the game. And I was hurt too, but I knew that I was playing the game. And that, it was like, it was pretty crazy. That was like a ripple effect. But notice like the first situationship, the second situationship, I knew it was toxic. Why I dug deeper and why I continued to go into like something that's obviously gonna burn me, I know, but at the time it was just stupid. So yes, I have.
Okay. So tell me something like one of the situationships did that you would consider toxic. Like what made it toxic? And what did they do?
Well, I'm trying to be honest, but not like be too honest.
Oh no, I know we gotta. Viewer discretion is advised, so we're gonna keep it.
Yeah. There was one person in particular who we connected or whatever, and I knew that this was a shared experience. It was not just me. It was
okay.
It was a choir, okay? And I for me, knowing that, right? And also knowing, honestly, what I genuinely desired, which is just a godly relationship, my husband, blah, 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 blah. Because I had, like, insecurities or just voids that I just wanted to fill, dealing with you right now is, and kind of, like, being drunk in a sense is easier than being sober and dealing with my own stuff and actually healing the stuff that's like wanting me to like be toxic and want toxicity. So I think like in that situation and them still being hurt by it, you know the situation, you're indulging in the situation, you are a pawn in the chess game. But it was easier in that sense, in that moment to deal with that than to actually take the time to heal the work. Because honestly, like we want relationships, we want all of these things, but we want to put like a band-aid on something that needs surgery. Don't nobody want to do surgery though. We don't want to wait and kind of like do the healing process because it's hard, it sucks. We'd rather like be like, no, this is gonna fix it, right? It actually makes it worse. So I think that situation, without being too honest, led me to a lot of decisions that were not like Aliya. Like, these are not things that you do. But that season, it was pretty ghetto, and I was probably the most
Ghetto.
ghettoist.
Listen, you said something interesting. Okay, so you, like many of us, right, want relationships. Some of us want to be married. Some of us want that love of our life. We want to travel with, we want to be with, and stuff like that. But knowing that this, you know what I mean, like, is the goal, we settle for this, and to the point where we get addicted to this. Why do you think most people get addicted to toxic relationships instead of waiting it out and playing the long game to get the end game that they want?
That's a good question. Well, I will start off with the long game takes work. Not that toxic relationships don't, but...
Ooh, that was good. Because toxic relationships do take work.
Maybe take
wow. Right.
But long relationships take work. For instance, right? I know for me in this season, if I can be honest, this is not the season for me to be in a relationship. There are certain things that God, the processes and things that God has me in. The relationship is not right now. It's probably, you know, down the line. But right, if I like go on blackpeoplemeet.com or Christian Mingle, I could find somebody. People can do
you
that,
stay
right?
off of Christian Mingle.
Yeah,
to you.
I think that's pretty dangerous. But and then going back to like toxic relationships, right? I think
Christian Mingle is Tinder with scripture. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm weak. That's funny. I got that vibe too. I was like, yeah. I don't know about that.
That's you using scripture to manipulate the situation. Christian
right.
Mingle
If God
toxic.
didn't reach you by now, you shouldn't be on here.
Right.
But I think going back to like toxic relationships, right? Those do take work. But it's something about like, okay, it's something about sin. I'm not trying to be churchy, but it's something about sin where there is like certain habits and certain things that we've been addicted to that take a toll on us, but they take a toll on us later. They have like the instant, like momentary.
Like they're more convenient.
Yeah.
It's more convenient. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And they give us that. And that's why we find ourselves like addicted to sin, right? We wouldn't be addicted to something that did not feel good or satisfy us at some point. So even though this toxic relationship, like obviously is the worst, there's a reason sometimes we go back and the whole runaround about how we break up and we fight and then we make up and all this stupidity, like that's crazy. But for us, we're drawn to that. We're attached, and it's honestly like, and not even to be churchy, it goes back to just this whole like, because the enemy is behind it, right? It goes back to how he like entices us and kind of brings us and trying to like just brings us through the ringer, and it from the outside looking in, it sucks. From this is good. It's just like when the Israelites were released from Egypt and they wanted to go back. They wanted to go back to slavery. They wanted to go back to what was going to keep them in bondage. Why? Because God was taking them through the healthy, you know, the situation. He was taking them to their promise. He was really preparing them. And this is the last thing I'll say. A lot of times we don't want to take the long road versus the short, or the healthy versus the toxic, because the long takes preparation. The long takes that wilderness season, preparing us for the promise so that we can sustain there, not be perfect. But going back to Egypt,
with all this scripture, you've been on Christian Mingle.
Listen, had to visit. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But you get what I'm saying? Like,
no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
It's true. So that was a long
right.
answer, but I think that's kind of where
you're right. As people, we're prone to go to what's available, what's more convenient. And if it takes us being hurt to get instant gratification, we'd rather be hurt. I hear you. And then, you said something actually a little bit earlier, that actually it was a thought I had even when we were like coming up with this topic, that, and somewhat trigger warning. Okay. This is a trigger warning for those listening. If you enjoy toxic relationships, or you yourself are toxic, you're insecure. There's no way you can tell me that you have it all together and you're whole and you see things the right way and you have a great perspective of everything that's true and pure, and be toxic. There's no way.
Yeah.
Right? Because I will say this, and many of us have family members, okay, that do this, and friends that do this, and coworkers that do this. There are many people who are nice toxic. So I'm not talking about just people who are blatantly toxic, you know, who that are like cussing you out, hitting you, being manipulative that way. I'm talking about you people out there who are also manipulative, toxic, that will try to use scripture and try to use loyalty and try to use love and stuff like that, and your status with that person to control them. That is still a form of toxicity, right? So if you're doing that, you have to be insecure. Why would I need to manipulate you if I'm all good?
Come on.
Why would I need to play you if I got it all together? Why would I need to convince you to do this, or why would I need to hit you if I'm good? You're insecure. And so I think, from going back to what I said previous, even for what I'm seeing on TikTok, right, and stuff like that, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, YouTube, people who like praise their toxic relationships are so insecure, they're settling for what they're good at. And what they're good at is being toxic. Tell me if you disagree.
Wow, no, I completely agree. Because some of us don't know what it's like. Some of us don't know what the healthy version of ourselves is like. We've been with the toxic version for so long, right? We've been this way, and toxic is comfortable. Okay.
Yeah, it sure is.
Know, healthiness can be comfortable too, but healthiness is almost like a learned type of thing. If you didn't grow up with like parents or just culture is crazy. Like, and they teach you what love is, which is, people don't really know what it is.
People don't really know.
We are trying to replicate, or kind of like, replicate what we've seen and what we know, but it's not how it should be. Like the whole, like, going back to your friend, and bless her heart, like that was a learned thing, right? And that's sad that, this is what we consider love. We don't really know love. But I definitely think that people kind of settle for the toxic versions of themselves, because I won't even say people, I will say everybody, at some point we've settled for the toxic version of ourselves, sometimes because we don't know what it's like to be healthy. And being healthy, again, it takes work. But one of the things is like, God is willing to help walk us through the necessary processes that we need to walk through if we are willing as well. A lot of times, like, even with healing, if we can be honest, that junk is terrible. It's not fun. But I know through my process, if I'm ever going to meet my healthy version, if I'm ever going to meet my healthy whatever, like the version of my life, if I'm ever going to get to the godly marriage that I started off desiring before doing the holy path, like this process of healing, right? This process of God mending and helping me through my insecurities, there's no way around it. But I know that God is willing to meet me in that process as well. And I know that, like, for instance, like in PE, when we used to run the mile, there were some of us who used to cut corners, okay? And some of us used to run the whole thing. The people who ran the whole thing, I feel like, got more of the benefit. Now, in the moment, did it suck? Of course. It did not feel good. But they received the benefit more than the people who cut corners. The people who cut corners weren't as strong or weren't as... And that's pretty dramatic for like sixth grade. But you get what I'm saying?
No, it's not dramatic. In sixth grade, there was a misunderstanding during the mile where this guy, I ruined something, and this guy said he was going to kill me. And I thought he was just kidding. First of all, it's sixth grade. I'm like... max maybe 4'10". I don't know. I was short. Well, I thought I was tall, but I was short. This dude was in the 8th grade, and he was 6 foot. Kid you not, 6 foot like 2 or something, 1. So he said, "I'm gonna get you during the mile." I'm like, "Nah." The guy said, "Go." He looked at me and started chasing me. I ran that mile a minute. Did a minute a lap. Man, I was hitting it.
God.
Then the last one, the coach finally says, "Don't touch him or you're getting detention." And then he said, "Finish strong." So the guy ran past me. He finished it in 4 minutes flat. He broke the school record. I slowed it down and I came in at like 5 minutes, 30 seconds. But no, you're not wrong. Middle school laps are seriously.
That is so crazy.
Okay, you said something, so we're segueing to healing a little bit. So we're not just focused. We spend a lot of time on being toxic. So we're going to segue. But before we segue, you know what's interesting? I experienced like this one of the craziest years of my life was 2000. I want to say 17, right? We're at this point, just skipping a lot of information. We're at this point where my wife is in the hospital. I just put my kids to a nap. I was like, one of my jobs, I had enough sick time to call out. The other jobs, I had to work half day. So I would take my kids in the work with me for half the day, come home, be with them the rest of the day, go visit my wife. She had a severe asthma attack, like couldn't breathe on her own and all that stuff, right? And it was around the time, at the time, I only had 2 kids. My youngest was 1. So I was like frustrated. I put them to sleep. I went in the hallway and I was frustrated. I was so mad at God. I said this, and I told God straight up. I had a conversation how we're having a conversation. I sat down and said, Lord, this isn't fair. I said, I'm taking over a ministry. My wife is sick. You know, I have to work. I have to do all this different stuff. Why are you doing this to me? What did I do? I'm trying to be obedient. Like I was going off, right? Yeah. The Lord said, because at this time too, like mind you, a few days prior, something happened to where there was like where we had to move, and I'm living with my brother now. And I'm just hot. And he was like, I literally heard the Lord say just like this, have you been hungry yet? I was like, no. Right? Answering like this. He goes, do you have a roof over your head? I said, yeah. Aren't your kids in their sleep? Is your wife still alive? And I started crying, right? My sons woke up at the end of the prayer. I was holding my 1-year-old. And I sit on the keyboard and I just played these 2 simple chords, right? Then I wrote a song. At first, the song was called Toxic. And the song talks about, in the verse, it was talking about how, Lord, you have control of me. Your love, is everywhere, stuff like that. And then I went to the hook where it said, your love is so toxic. Your love is so toxic. Your love is so toxic. And then at first I was like, oh, this is a hit. I showed Meryl. She didn't like it. She's like, why are you saying he's toxic? I didn't get it. I showed my brother. He's like, why are you saying toxic? I'm like, y'all don't hear. This is a hit, right?
You don't understand.
Right. So I went home that night. I'm like, what's wrong with you? And I heard the Lord say, no, your love towards me was toxic because you're expecting me to do things for you at the will and your convenience of what you think makes sense. And God said, I'm not toxic. I'm contagious because when you come near me, right? And he's like, when you come near me, you can't get me out your nose. You can't get the taste out your mouth. You can't get the feeling away because I'm coming, I consume and I engulf. So I changed the word from your love is so toxic to your love is so contagious, right? Then at one point, I even rewrote it because the verse says, Lord, you have control of me. Your glory so potent, consuming. Your love, it fills the air. You can't help but spread it everywhere. Your grace is unmatched. It's igniting flames everywhere that you go. And I seem to be latched and I can't whatever. I don't see myself letting go, whatever. And then at first I said, I'm addicted to you. But God was like, no, I changed it to I'm committed to you. You know what I mean? Being on my knees, all praise goes to you. Not just like seeking blessings, but seeking more of you. More of you. Please give me more of you. Because your love is so contagious. Your love is so contagious. And I can't control my breath. So then I changed it. So I say all this to say that you sometimes in our anger, we identify, and sometimes in our just humanistic being, we confuse what's toxic and what's contagious. So sometimes we're in toxic relationships because we're addicted to those. But then when we really find true healing, we realize that healing is contagious because when you're healed, you want to heal others. Yeah. And you want to spread that healing to others. So I said all that to say that. So real quick, before we go into this healing topic, we've been talking for a minute. So guys, we're going to have Aliya introduce her song Healed, and then we're going to play that so you guys can hear it. And then we're going to talk about the process of the song and things like that. So Aliya, introduce your song, please.
Well, thank you. So I wrote this song Healed, I believe year 2020, which was a crazy year, but Healed came from my heart. It came from a healing season. It is on Apple Music, iTunes, all the things. And there's a visual as well as on YouTube. So I hope you guys like it. Took a lot to write it. So yeah.
It's honestly one of the dopest songs I've ever heard. Everybody healed. Enjoy. We'll be back after this.
in this version of you, showing up in chapter 22. It's like love is drifting. I really thought that this time it was true, but my heart feels like it's been used. A paper plate you throw away when you throw. Healing's therapeutic, healing it hurts. Makes you see things you try to divert. Break down the walls that you build real tough. But my callous heart says enough is enough. 2 seconds from bitter, I feel all the pain. Shaking hands, best of like what a good game. I feel like I'm losing in something I crave. Like this love thing just ain't meant for me. Sing it out. Sugar, yeah, make some medicine, make some medicine drown, make some medicine drown, yeah. Chase the pain away, but only for now, yeah, only for now, yeah. Taking risk with your heart seems like a lesson. I studied real hard but failed the test, and I ain't allowed to cry cause the tears keep falling. I know I love hard but I thought you was worth it. The world moves on, no matter what you feel. I wanna let it go but it's so hard to heal. Believe me when I say I want you to thrive, but the weight of this exchange seems like a lie. You said thank you for sacrificing your heart. At the end of every sacrifice you risk losing parts. I gotta get this out, I gotta vomit what's inside. Tend to the root so I move on with my life. It's joy in the morning, purpose in the pain. Was cutting out the weeds but they growing back again. I'm singing to a root, not really singing to a man, but a rose got thorns for a reason. Sugar, make some medicine, make the medicine drown, make the medicine drown, yeah. Chase the pain away, but only for now, yeah, only for now, yeah.
Didn't I tell you it was dope? I told you guys that song was dope. Okay, humbly, she's being humble and saying, "Oh, but no, the song was dope. She knows it. It was fire." When I first heard it, I was like, I literally got up on my seat. I said, "Wait a minute, who is this?" And my sister was listening to it. I said, "Wait a minute," and I purchased it. I'm like, "Look, this song is dope." So, kudos to you. It's a dope song. So tell us, because you said it came from your heart, right? It took a lot of work. Tell us like the inspiration behind it. What's the backstory? Be toxic with us.
Yes. Let's get into the toxicity.
Right.
So, honestly, like sometimes like we say like music is my life or whatever. That really was like my life at the moment. At the time I was in a situationship, if you will. We're friends now, so we're cool. But at the time, yeah.
See, guys, there's healing in your situation.
There's healing. Hiya. At the time, I was going through this heartbreak, and this one was different from the situationships and the toxic things because I really, really did love this person, and the heartbreak of that, and other things involved in that. It felt so. I felt like I couldn't get past it. It felt so deep. It felt so real. It felt so all the things. And so I was in this season of processing. And sometimes in our seasons of processing, we just want to stay in the bed or we just want to whatever, all of the stuff. And that I did do that stuff. But there was one moment where I heard this like track and I was like, oh, I got to write. I just had an itch, but I couldn't get the words out. And so I went to my brother's studio. Shout out to Justin Goss. And I was
Goss Ministries.
Yes. And so I was like, brother, I just want to write this song, but I just can't get it out. He was like, because you're trying to write it safe. I think like for me, I was trying to write it like, oh God, you're so good. No. Because, you know, at the time, and I'm still learning God, I'm still learning my father, but I thought that when you present things to God or whatever, you present it and it has to be victorious right at that moment, or it has to be whatever right at that moment. But I was hurt. And so my brother was like, I'm going to go play basketball. I'm leaving you for an hour, right? And then I'll be back. I was like, okay. So I'm just playing and looping. And when we kind of like strip that expectation of like, we need to write this in the Christianese version, I just wrote. And it almost, this sounds nasty, but it was almost like vomiting. I wrote that song in 1 hour. That has never happened to me. And when he came back to the studio, he was like, "Hey," I was like, "Yeah, I got it all, like everything, the hooks, the verse, everything." And so I sang it for him, and it was bomb. But when we tried to record it, this was my birthday too. We tried to record it. He was like, "Are you ready?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I just started crying like a wimp. But it was honestly like it was a vomiting. It was a part of that healing process that I couldn't get around. I had to have it. And even like if we're going to talk about toxicity, to be completely honest, after that heartbreak, I caused more heartbreak for myself by indulging with a couple more people to get over that one. But there's like, it never works. It's always a root. So this was a moment in this within.
You guys
like,
remember she said the roots in the song.
With writing this song where God was like, I know you don't want to.
Right.
And I know you couldn't get it out because you were trying to move past this part, but we have to get to this part. There's gonna be light after this. Don't get me wrong. But like, it's almost like God, I feel like he talks like this. He's like, baby girl, we gotta do this. And I'll be here. I'll help you. But that's kind of how Heal came about. And then,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy because people actually don't know, like, if you ever really took the time, to like read Psalms, right? Mm-hmm. Dude was venting. They were considered worship songs. He was venting. He was like, Lord, I'm distressed. Where are you? You know what I mean?
It's so contradictory.
And I feel like with music these days, like even the way I write and stuff like that, with music these days, I feel like if my dad said something to me that convicted me hard when I was a kid, but I related to everything that I do. I preached a message, right? I was like I did Hebrew and Greek stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm breaking this down. And I was just a kid, but I'm like, yeah, this is what the Hebrew word says and the Greek words. And then I was trying to do that stuff, right? After I was done, I'm smiling because my dad walks over to me. I'm thinking he's about to say, son, you're ready, right? I was ready to be like the next teen sensation revivalist, right? He said, if a 6-year-old and a 6-year-old can't understand what you just preached, you just wasted everybody's time and walked away. I said, yo, right? So I went and I said, God, convict me the next time. I said, God, forgive me the next time I preach a message. I'm going to reach those ages, right? Yeah. Sure enough, the next time I preached a message, I preached till I was sweating. A 60-year-old man, like 60, 65, came up to me and he was crying. Said, I need to give my life to Christ. I can't believe, the message. I'm like, right? I'm like, oh, well, praise God. Then I think, how old is Cameron? She's between 6 and 8. She walks over to me, hands me a note and runs away. A little kid, right? I opened it. I kid you not, I opened it. She said, I really enjoy your message and I understood everything. Thank you so much. I cried. And I literally felt like God was saying, now you understand what it takes. And so even with songs, my thing is, even though I'm a believer, I'm a saint of God. I'm not a Christian anymore because Christians have too many labels. You could be a cussing Christian. But anyways, I'm not judging y'all. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, personally, I don't cuss. So I can't identify as a cussing Christian. Anyway, so as much as I'm a believer, as much as I know like what I stand for, how I practice life and stuff like that, I feel like when it comes to my music specifically, I asked God, I said, what's the point of me making music? He said, to change people's perspective. Eventually they'll see me through it. I said, okay. So I write as not too deep, but I write something that basically that like the more you listen to it, the more something is revealed about you. To this day, I get convicted by my own music. You know what I mean? I listened to a song. I was in the hospital, never knew what it was like to be in the hospital. And I wrote a song one time talking about, God, I'm still blessed if I, connect to an IV. Heard that song and I got out the hospital, start crying. I said, I didn't know because I didn't feel blessed, but, Mr. back. So I said all that to say, it's so great to hear that you were transparent with this song. You were open. It reaches so many different levels because people like the way you wrote about healing, you weren't just talking about, which you would have did, I believe, if you did the Christian Victory way. You didn't deal with sickness in the hospital. You dealt with sickness mentally, physically, spiritually, and naturally. You see what I'm saying? Like the way you went over healing relates to somebody who's sitting in the sick bed in the hospital. It relates to somebody who's going through trauma from a relationship. It relates to somebody who might be sitting in a mental institution. Like you literally crossed over so many things just by writing what was real and what's authentic. And I feel like that was your first step out of being toxic. Because even though you said it, you might have gotten to toxic relationships afterwards. The first step was you being honest and transparent to realize I'm feeling this way and I play a part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In it?
Yeah.
Because I looked at a verse that you said. I looked at a word you said that I looked at it two different ways. Okay. And so this is just my perspective as a listener who enjoyed the song. You said, but a rose got thorns for a reason, right? I looked at that two different ways. No. Guys, my camera blacked out. Don't worry. I looked at it two different ways. See? This is the devil. I told you if you're playing games. We're going to finish this up. We're going to do a part two because the episode's supposed to be 30 minutes anyways. We're going to do a part two. So, I looked at it two different ways. A thorn. No, I'm going to start it for part two. Guys, this is it for this episode. We're going to come back with part two, and then we're going to dive into this. I'm so glad it's a part two. Aliya, thank you so much. Can you wave to the people and tell them bye?
Bye, you guys.
Okay, guys, next week we're going to finish this. We'll finish this in a part two. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Got the proof. Yeah, I got the proof. I got the proof. Yeah, you won't lose. Yeah, I got the proof. I got the proof.